The Vordkai collective had conquered 47 star systems. 47. They had burned fleets, shattered moons, and made entire species sign surrender documents written in their own ash. The collective was not modest about this. They had it printed on their diplomatic banners. They announced it at every council session. They probably had it stitched into their ceremonial robes, though Ambassador Thalos had never looked closely enough to confirm that particular detail. Thalos was the senior diplomatic attaché of the Galactic Accord, and on this specific morning, which began like any other morning before it turned into an absolute catastrophe, he was sitting across a polished obsidian table from General Vraan of the Vordkai. General Vraan was the kind of being who looked like a threat even when he was sitting still. 7 feet of ridged armor plating, 4 upper limbs, 2 sets of compound eyes that never blinked, and a voice like gravel being processed through an industrial compactor. He was not by any standard a being you invited to a casual lunch, and yet, here they were. The terms are simple, Vraan said, sliding a data slate across the table. The species called humans will evacuate 17 of their colony worlds within 40 standard rotations. Those sectors fall within our expansion corridor. We have been generous in providing this timeline. Thalos read the document. Then he read it again. Then he set it down very carefully, the way you set something down when your hands are shaking and you don't want anyone to notice. General, he said, keeping his voice professionally level, I appreciate the collective's communication. However, I want to be absolutely certain you are aware of which species you are referencing. The humans, from the Sol system, 3rd planet. Vraan made a sound that was either laughter or the noise a grinding machine makes before it destroys something irreplaceable. We are aware, and you have reviewed their history. We reviewed their territorial maps. The colonies are lightly fortified. Their fleet, by our projections, is manageable. Thalos closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. He was a professional. He did not, under any circumstance, visibly despair in diplomatic chambers. That rule had kept him employed for 32 years across 6 interstellar conflicts. He broke the rule. General Vraan, he said, pressing 2 fingers to the bridge of his nasal ridge. I need you to understand something. Not as a negotiating tactic, not as a bluff, as a sincere act of biological compassion from one living creature to another. Please, do not do this. Vraan leaned forward. Are you threatening us? No. No, that is entirely the wrong direction. I am begging you. There is a meaningful difference. The general's compound eyes shifted. In Vordkai body language, that was amusement. Pure, condescending amusement. The kind reserved for small creatures making big noises. The Accord grows sentimental, Vraan said. 47 systems. Attaché. We have never been stopped. 47 systems, Thalos agreed quietly. None of them had humans. 3 days later, the ultimatum was formally transmitted to Earth. Commander Dara Voss of the Terran Defense Command received it at 0600 hours, still holding her morning coffee, still wearing the expression of someone who had been awake for 4 minutes and was not emotionally prepared for interstellar threats. She read it once. She handed it to Colonel Marco Sefar, her intelligence chief, who read it with the focused intensity of a man who had spent 20 years cataloging everything that could go wrong in the universe. Well, Marco said. Yeah, Dara said. A long pause settled over the command room. Outside the reinforced windows, the orbital station hummed quietly, completely unaware that it had just become relevant to a diplomatic crisis. They want 17 colonies, Marco said. I read it. 40 rotations. I can count. Commander, Marco set the data slate down. His voice was the very specific tone of a man choosing his next words with surgical precision. Do they know what happened to the Hevrak Dominion? Apparently not. The Sul Collective? Also no. The Marco. Dara finally looked up from her coffee. Her eyes were calm. Not the calm of someone who wasn't worried. The calm of someone who had already moved past worry into something quieter and considerably more dangerous. They don't know. That's fine. They're about to learn. She set her cup down on the console, pressed a single key. On the massive tactical display above them, 17 colony worlds lit up in pale blue. Around each one, defense network grids flickered to life. Supply chains activated. Fleet positioning data began refreshing in real time, pulling from deep-range sensor arrays that the Vordkai, apparently, had not known to look for, because the humans had built them quietly. Humans were remarkably good at building things quietly. Get me Admiral Tenne, Dara said, and someone find the diplomatic feed for the Accord. Tell Ambassador Thalos we received the message. The comm officer paused. What should I tell him? Our responses, Commander. Dara Voss picked up her coffee again. She almost smiled. Tell him we said, thank you for the warning. In the Accord diplomatic station, Ambassador Thalos received that message, read it 3 times, and then sat completely motionless for 40 seconds. His assistant leaned over. Sir? What did they say? Thalos looked up. His expression was not fear exactly. It was the particular look of a being watching a storm roll in from a direction they had specifically told someone else to watch. Get General Vraan, he said softly. Tell him I strongly recommend he speak with me again, before he does anything. And if he refuses? Thalos exhaled slowly through his nasal ridge. Then, my young friend, he said, we are about to witness something genuinely historic. He did not say it like a good thing. General Vraan did not call back. Of course he did not. The Vordkai collective had conquered 47 star systems. They did not return calls from diplomats who looked nervous. Nervousness, in Vordkai culture, was simply confirmation that you were correct. So Vraan did what Vraan always did. He mobilized 400 warships, 3 carrier-class flagships, enough firepower to crack a moon at the equator and gift-wrap both halves. The Vordkai fleet moved through the transit corridor toward the first human colony world, Karev Station, with the slow and deliberate confidence of a being who has never, not once, been genuinely surprised. Thalos watched the fleet movement data on his console and did something he had not done in 11 years of diplomatic service. He poured himself a drink at 0900 hours. His assistant watched him do it without comment. She was learning. How long until they reach Karev? She asked. 18 hours, Thalos said. He took a slow sip. Plenty of time. For what? He set the glass down. For the humans to do what humans do when someone points a fleet at one of their homes. She waited for him to elaborate. He did not elaborate. Some things, he had learned, were better witnessed than described. Admiral Petra Tenne received the fleet coordinates at 0400 station time and did not blink once while reading them. She was 61 years old. She had 17 combat deployments on her service record, 2 of which were classified so deeply that the files required 4 separate authorization codes to access and still only showed up as blank pages. She had the posture of someone who had been told bad news so many times that bad news had simply stopped registering as a category. She pulled up the Vordkai fleet formation on her tactical board and studied it for a long, quiet moment. They're flying in a compression wedge, said her tactical officer, Lieutenant Corso, who was 26 and still at the stage of his career where he narrated obvious things out loud from pure nervous energy. I see that, Corso. Their lead ships have forward shield arrays stacked triple layer. It's a breach formation, designed for punching through static defenses. I see that too. It's actually a very effective formation against conventional Corso. Tenne turned from the board. Her voice was not unkind. It was simply a door closing. What do we know about their sensor range? He checked. Standard long-range arrays. Commercial-grade military sensors. They can detect mass signatures up to 4 light minutes out. Good. Tenne turned back to the board. Then they won't see Commander Voss's flanking wings until those wings are already behind them. Corso looked at the board again, then looked harder, then slowly, with the expression of a man solving a puzzle that he did not know had been set in front of him, he began to understand the positioning of the 14 deep-range signatures, sitting perfectly still in the sensor shadow of Karev's twin moons. 14 wings, sitting quiet, patient as stone. How long have those been there? He asked. Since yesterday morning, Tenne said simply. Dara moves fast when she's motivated. She pressed the fleet-wide channel. All wings, this is Admiral Tenne. They are 17 minutes out. Hold position. Let them commit to the approach vector completely. Nobody fires until I say the word. And nobody, she added, with a very specific pause, say the word before I do. A chorus of confirmations came back. Clean, disciplined, calm. Tenne almost smiled. Almost. General Vraan was 6 minutes from Karev station when his sensor officer made a sound. It was not a word. It was the specific non-verbal noise a being makes when the data on their screen stops matching any category that their training prepared them for. General, the sensor officer said. His voice had a new texture in it. Something thin and high that had not been present 60 seconds ago. I am reading mass signatures. Multiple. They are... Location, Vraan said sharply. Behind us, sir. Port, starboard and directly aft. They appear to have been a boon. A pause. They appear to have been waiting. The command deck went very quiet. Vraan stood from his chair and walked to the sensor array himself, because there was clearly some error, some malfunction, some technical problem that his officer had misread. He looked at the screen. He studied the signatures. He counted them twice with the precise and methodical focus of a general who had built his career on accurate information. 14 wings. Behind him, surrounding him, already in firing position. He had flown directly into the center of a trap so neatly constructed that he had not seen a single thread of it until the door closed behind him. General, his communications officer turned slowly. "We are receiving a transmission. It is from the human commander," she says. A pause. She says she hopes your morning is going well and asks if you would like to discuss revised terms. The silence on the command deck stretched out like something physical. Vraan said nothing for a very long time. Outside, 47 stars worth of conquest suddenly felt like a very long time ago, and a very different universe entirely. When the transmission reached Thalos, he was already on his third cup of something warm, and was sitting with his feet on his desk, which was not regulation, but some mornings simply demanded it. His assistant read the summary aloud. Vraan's fleet had accepted a full communications ceasefire. The 17-colony ultimatum had been formally withdrawn. The Vordkai collective was requesting a new round of diplomatic talks, at a time and location of humanity's choosing. She looked up. They folded completely. "Yes," Thalos said, "without a single shot being fired." "That," he said, raising his cup slightly, "is rather the point." She sat down across from him. Her expression carried the look of someone restructuring a very large mental model at high speed. How did Commander Voss know exactly where to position those wings? The Vordkai fleet path was only confirmed 18 hours before arrival. Thalos looked at his cup for a moment. "Because humans," he said slowly, "do not wait to be threatened before they start preparing. They began placing those wings the moment the ultimatum was transmitted. 3 days before the fleet even moved." He set the cup down. "They prepared for a war before the war was declared. They surrounded a fleet that did not know it was being surrounded, and then they offered, very politely, to talk instead." He leaned back in his chair. "The Vordkai thought they were hunting," he said. "They were never hunting. They were simply the last ones to realize they were the ones being watched." His assistant was quiet for a long moment. "Is that a human strategy or a human instinct?" Thalos considered this question with complete seriousness. "I have spent 32 years studying 49 spacefaring species," he finally said, "and I still cannot tell the difference. With humans, I genuinely cannot tell." He picked up his cup again. "That," he added, very quietly, "is what makes them extraordinary." General Vraan signed the new terms 3 days later. The document did not mention 47 systems. It did not mention expansion corridors or ultimatums or compression wedge formations. It mentioned very specifically a clause requiring 30 standard days of advanced communication before any Vordkai fleet movement within 4 sectors of human-controlled space. Commander Voss had requested that clause personally. When asked why 30 days specifically, she had smiled the smile of someone who already knew exactly what they would do with 30 days. Nobody asked a second time.